Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, we have opened the door of peace. Ethiopia rolls out the red carpet for Eritrea's foreign minister. The two nations are hopeful that they're getting closer than ever to ending decades of animosity. Also, we head to Timbuktu in Mali to hear from some of the Burkina Faso refugees who say that they've fled a spike in terror attacks and violence by their own security forces. And the Super Eagles are brought low in St Petersburg. Nigeria is out of the World Cup after losing 2-1 to Argentina. But first, Ethiopia's leader believes that decades of conflict with Eritrea may soon be over. In a marked shift of relations, Eritrea's foreign minister made a historic visit to the capital of the neighbouring nation on Tuesday after being offered an olive branch by President Abiy Ahmed. Now, he's dramatically called the diplomatic progress the start of the era of love and reconciliation. Nicolas Germain tells us more.
When the Eritrean delegation arrived in Addis Ababa to meet the Ethiopian government, it was the first to do so in 20 years. Eritrean representatives had not come for 2 decades because the two nations fought a bloody border war in 1998. It lasted 2 years and cost the lives of 80,000 people. An independent commission established a border ruling in 2002. But until earlier this month, Ethiopia had refused it. Then Abiy Ahmed, the new prime minister, stunned many when he offered an olive branch to Eritrean President Isaias Afwerki. Abiy Ahmed said he would accept the border ruling, which would imply leaving some areas occupied today by Ethiopia. Analysts said Afwerki accepted the talks because Abiy Ahmed is not from the Tigray minority ethnic group. Its representatives had held power in Ethiopia for nearly 30 years, and Afwerki does not trust them. Many believe they could be behind the explosion at a rally attended by Abiy Ahmed on Saturday. Tuesday's talks represent a major event for the people of the two countries who have a lot in common historically and culturally. Eritrea used to be part of Ethiopia, but after a 30-year struggle, it became independent in 1993 and took the entire Ethiopian coastline. If peace is restored, Ethiopia could once again have access to Eritrea's ports. Experts say that in Eritrea, the Ethiopian threat was the pretext for Afwerki's authoritarian rule. And the big question is what he will do if that threat disappears.
Well, Elias Messeret tells us more about Tuesday's visit.
It's very early to say anything positive or negative has come out of this meeting because the Eritrean delegation arrived here in Addis this afternoon. But surely there is a lot of excitement building up around this historic visit, which is the first in 20 years. The last Eritrean delegation came to Addis 2 or 3 days before the start of the war in 1998, which led to the deaths of tens of thousands of people on both sides. It is expected that the delegation will stay in Ethiopia for the next few days, so we will be able to know the outcome after that.
So what is Abiy Ahmed risking by reaching out to Eritrea? He's been in office not very long, and he already seems to be really moving forward at quite a pace with bringing in some pretty substantial shake-ups.
For sure, some segments of the society, especially those who live around the border area and want to stay with Ethiopia, will be disappointed. In fact, there have been some protesters in some parts of northern Ethiopia against Prime Minister Abiy's move to accept the southern peace deal with Eritrea, and also the subsequent border decision that will give away some locations, including the flashpoint town of Bademba to Eritrea.
So what would it mean for the region if relations between Ethiopia and Eritrea do continue to normalize as it looks like it might do?
Actually, it means a lot. The no or no peace situation between Ethiopia and Eritrea has often been cited as one of the causes for the security breach in this part of Africa. Ethiopia has often accused Eritrea of arming its rebel groups and also helping in Somalia's Al-Shabaab. Eritrea, on its part, has accused Ethiopia of harboring its armed groups. So if this process succeeds, all this is hoped to end once and for all. The economic benefit for both countries and the entire region is also going to be huge.
So Eritrea specifically has also in the past used the friction with Ethiopia as a justification for conscription and some pretty oppressive rules. Could the warming up of relations between the countries change that?
You are right. Analysts have been stating this far too long. But the fact is, the fact that the Eritrean government has decided to accept Ethiopia's peace offer, and to send this delegation means that they are ready to accept whatever comes out next.
Look now at some news in brief. Sudan's saying that the two men at the centre of South Sudan's 4.5-year civil war are close to settling a peace deal. South Sudan's President Salva Kiir and rebel leader Riek Machar are in Khartoum, which is hosting the latest round of talks between the rivals. Authorities there say that the pair have agreed on some points during peace negotiations and are due to sign a deal on Wednesday morning. Machar's camp, though, has been more restrained and says that negotiations on just a framework agreement could still take time. A teenager who had been sentenced to death for murdering her husband has had her sentence commuted to a 5-year jail term by a Sudanese court. Noura Hussein, who's now 19, says she acted in self-defense in 2017 after being forced into marriage and raped by her husband. Noura's lawyer filed an appeal after her original capital sentence triggered international condemnation from the UN and rights groups who started up the Justice for Noura campaign. UN investigators have accused both Congolese security forces and militia battling them in the region of Kasai of crimes against humanity. Kasai was plunged into violence towards the end of 2016 after government troops killed a local chieftain who was opposed to President Joseph Kabila's leadership. Now, both sides have been linked to atrocities on civilians, including murder, mutilation, and rape. Now, over the last few months, thousands of refugees from the north of Burkina Faso have crossed over into Mali. They fled extremist attacks and alleged abuses by their own military. Our correspondents have met some of those affected.
Aya arrived in Mali at the end of last year with all his family. He left his village called Taunti in Burkina Faso and crossed the border. He came to Mali after several of his family had been arrested. He still doesn't know what's happened to them.
We left Mali because we were afraid of the authorities. The security forces arrested people, beat them up, and put them in prison. That's why we fled. They link us to the Tuaregs. They don't see any difference between us and bandits, so they take everyone.
Aya now lives in Gossi in the region of Timbuktu. Nearly 250 families from Burkina Faso have fled here.
At the end of December last year, we were alerted to the presence of new refugees at the border who crossed to come to the Timbuktu region around Gossi. We then alerted local authorities, NGOs and other charities.
Hundreds of people continue to arrive in Mali from Burkina Faso. There's more than 7,000 now here.
I truly understand that security is a priority, but it's also a priority for Malians to be able to go home, and military action must be done in a way that respects civil rights. And I think sometimes in the middle of things going on, people feel like targets. They feel threatened and scared.
After the release of a report by NGO Human Rights Watch last month, the Burkina Faso government has pledged not only to better train its military, but open inquiries into the allegations of civilian abuses.
And sadly, Nigeria is out of the World Cup. This after losing 2-1 to Argentina. It's a devastating result for fans who'd hoped to see the Super Eagles soar far further in the tournament, particularly as Argentina had put in a far from stellar showing so far. Our Ketavan Gordestani is in St Petersburg. She joins us now. Ket, it's a gutting outcome for Nigeria's supporters. Talk us through the game.
Yes, it is gutting because the Super Eagles came very close to reaching the last 16. They needed a victory or a draw to make it through. It started out not really well for the Super Eagles because Leo Messi, the Argentinian superstar, was the one who got on the score sheet first to put Argentina ahead 1-0 in the 14th minute. At that point, Nigeria were out of the competition. But then after the break, the Nigerian Nigerians were awarded a penalty after a foul by Javier Mascherano, and it was Victor Moses who scored that penalty kick to equalize for Nigeria. And at that point, with that 1-1 draw, Nigeria were through to the last 16. Nigeria, who were almost awarded another penalty in that second half, but VAR decided that it was not a penalty. It was a 1-1 draw, and it looked like it was going to end on that 1-1 draw, and that the Nigerian Super Eagles were going to get through to the last 16. But in the 86 minutes, Marcos Rojo scored the winning goal for Argentina, eliminating Nigeria from this World Cup and sending Argentina through to the last 16. A huge disappointment for the Nigerians, who had a very strong performance against Argentina tonight, but their competition ends tonight here in St. Petersburg.
Thanks very much, Ket. Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks very much for joining us, and do so again if you can. Take care.
People and Profit, presented by Stephen Carroll.
Business news is not about numbers, nor percentages and statistics. Business news is about people and how we live our lives. People and Profit goes beyond numbers to analyse how the global flow of money and profits shape our world. Intelligent and accessible, the show cuts across business, economics and politics.
People and Profit, on France 24 and France24.com.